As soon as they stepped into the spirit land, strange things started to happen. First, a man came up to the prince and took his legs. Then another came and took his head. Another one took his body, and so on. Within a few minutes, the prince was left with nothing but a skull. Thema was terrified. She couldn't understand what had happened to her handsome prince. The prince, now just a skull. Once upon a time, in a distant kingdom, there was a wealthy and powerful king. This king had a beautiful daughter named Thema. Thema was of the perfect age to get married. All the young men in the kingdom wanted to marry her because of her beauty, but she refused all their offers. Even the rich old men who asked to marry her were turned down. She would call them old and ugly. Thema was very proud and thought very highly of herself. Thema's parents were very worried about her. They wanted her to get married and be happy, but she refused to marry anyone from her land. She told her parents that she would only marry a rich prince from a faraway kingdom. This prince would have to be the best-looking man in the entire world. He would need to be strong and perfect in every way and love her deeply. So, Thema continued to disobey her parents, and they were very sad about it. Thema's father, the king, would often sit with his advisors and talk about his worries. "What shall we do about Thema?" he would ask. "She refuses to marry anyone from our kingdom." The advisors would shake their heads and say, "Your Majesty, it is difficult to change the mind of someone as strong-willed as Princess Thema. Perhaps we should invite princes from other lands to come and meet her." The king liked this idea. He sent messengers to distant lands, inviting princes to come and visit the kingdom. Many princes came, each one more handsome and charming than the last. They brought gifts of gold, jewels, and fine clothes. They hoped to win Thema's heart, but she refused them all. "They are not good enough for me," she would say. "I want someone truly special." One day, something unusual happened in the village. There was a lot of noise and excitement. People were asking, what could be happening? Soon, the news reached the palace. A very handsome man had been seen in the market, and he was more good-looking than any of the local men. Thema quickly rushed to the market. When she saw the handsome man, she fell in love with him immediately. She invited him to her house, and the prince was happy to go with her. When they arrived at her house, Thema introduced the handsome prince to her parents. The prince asked for their permission to marry Thema. At first, her parents said no. They didn't want their daughter to marry a stranger. But after some time, they agreed. The prince stayed with Thema and her parents for 2 days. After that, he said he wanted to take his new wife back to his country, which was very far away. Thema agreed right away because she was so taken by his looks. Her parents tried to convince her to stay, but she had made up her mind. So, they set off together. It was a very sad day for the king and queen. Thema and the prince walked for several days. They finally crossed the border between the human land and the spirit land. As soon as they stepped into the spirit land, strange things started to happen. First, a man came up to the prince and took his legs. Then another came and took his head. Another one took his body, and so on. Within a few minutes, the prince was left with nothing but a skull. Thema was terrified. She couldn't understand what had happened to her handsome prince. The prince, now just a skull, laughed at her. He told her that she was now seeing him in his true form. He had borrowed all those body parts from other spirits to look human when he asked to marry her. In reality, he was just a human skull. Thema wanted to go back home, but the skull wouldn't let her. He ordered her to come with him. They walked until they reached the skull's house. There, they met his mother. She was a very old woman who couldn't do much work. She could barely move around. Thema felt sorry for her and tried her best to help. She cooked food, fetched water, and gathered firewood for the old woman. The old woman was very grateful and soon became fond of Thema. The days in the spirit land were long and filled with hard work. Thema woke up early every morning to fetch water from a distant stream. The path to the stream was rocky and difficult to walk on. She would carry heavy pots of water back to the house, her arms and back aching from the effort. After fetching water, she would gather firewood from the nearby forest. The firewood was essential for cooking and keeping the house warm. The forest was dark and filled with strange noises. Thema was often scared, but she knew she had to be brave. After gathering firewood, Thema would cook meals for the old woman. The food in the spirit land was very different from what she was used to. She had to learn how to cook with strange ingredients and new recipes. Despite the challenges, Thema worked hard and did her best. The old woman appreciated her efforts and often praised her. "You are a good girl, Thema," she would say. "You have a kind heart." One day the old woman decided to help Thema. She felt sorry for her and promised to send her back to her own country. But Thema had to promise that she would obey her parents in the future. Thema agreed without hesitation. The old woman then called a spider who was very good at styling hair. The spider styled Thema's hair in the latest fashion. The old woman also gave Thema anklets and other gifts to show her gratitude. Using her supernatural powers, the old woman called the breeze. She asked the breeze to gently carry Thema back to her father's kingdom. Soon, the breeze picked up Thema and carried her away. It wasn't long before Thema was back home, outside her house. When the king and queen saw their daughter, they were overjoyed. They had thought they had lost her forever. There was a great celebration throughout the kingdom. People danced and feasted for 8 days and nights. Afterward, the king made a new law. He declared that parents should never allow their daughters to marry strangers from faraway lands. The news of Thema's return spread quickly throughout the kingdom. Everyone was curious to hear her story. Thema shared her adventures with her friends and family. She told them about the handsome prince who turned out to be a skull, and the old woman who helped her return home. People listened with wide eyes, amazed by her bravery and the strange things she had seen. Soon, a prince from a neighboring village came to ask for Thema's hand in marriage. This time, Thema gladly agreed. She married the prince, and they lived happily together for many years. They had many children and were very happy. As the years went by, Thema and her husband grew older. They watched their children grow up and have children of their own. They were proud of their family and grateful for the life they had built together. Thema never forgot the lessons she had learned during her time in the spirit land. She was always kind and humble, and she taught her children to be the same. Thema and her husband lived a long and happy life. They were loved and respected by everyone in the kingdom. When they finally passed away, they were remembered as wise and loving rulers. The people of the kingdom honored their memory by continuing to tell the story of Princess Thema and the Skull Prince. The story of Princess Thema teaches the importance of humility, obedience, and the dangers of pride. Thema's initial arrogance and refusal to heed her parents' advice led her into a dangerous situation with the Skull Prince. However, her kindness and willingness to help others eventually saved her. The tale underscores that true beauty lies within, and that valuing the wisdom of elders and being kind-hearted can lead to a fulfilling and happy life. It also highlights the importance of being cautious when dealing with strangers and making decisions with care and consideration.